What if the year that seemed like it would launch a star's greatest success turned into the biggest source of turmoil in their life? That's exactly what appears to have happened with Justin Vaughn, whose recent confession in a newly released podcast episode has opened the floodgates to speculation, legal drama, and simmering tensions he can no longer hide. On the surface, this might look like just another Hollywood feud, another dispute about creative control, a misunderstood collaboration, or a big celebrity name overshadowing the process. Yet as more details spill out, it becomes clear that this isn't some trivial conflict. There are multiple lawsuits, deep-rooted anxieties, and intense pressure that's left Justin feeling like he can't catch a break. Even more surprising is that Justin's candid interview was recorded before the biggest storms in his life truly began. In this conversation, only now made public, he said he was running on empty and desperately needed to heal from a chaotic year. Little did he know that what he considered the end of a stressful season would soon explode into an avalanche of legal battles, strained relationships, and career-threatening controversies. His story has people asking, how did a single film project spiral into such a colossal meltdown? And how does Blake Lively, a powerful actress with her own reputation for taking creative control, factor into all this? In the next few minutes, we'll journey through Justin Vaughn's behind-the-scenes struggles. We'll see how he went from quietly managing his stress to standing in the middle of lawsuits, feuding castmates, and a swarm of online chatter. We'll delve into the high stakes of a film that was supposed to be a hotly anticipated adaptation, but ultimately ignited more drama than box office triumph. We'll also explore Blake Lively's role. Why was she so determined to shape the movie's narrative on her own terms? And how did that determination set off a domino effect of friction between her and Justin? By the end, you'll be left questioning how a single production, and the personalities driving it, could create such a deep rift and leave everyone involved wondering if they can ever recover. Despite Justin's typically optimistic demeanor, something was clearly off long before the public learned of the lawsuits. At first glance, it seemed like he was simply dealing with the typical stress of Hollywood: promotional tours, press events, and social media chatter that could be either supportive or vicious. However, a chain reaction of controversies, rumors, and creative disagreements was already simmering behind the cameras. In his newly released interview, recorded back in November, Justin hinted that his year had been unexpectedly rough. He wasn't just complaining about a jam-packed schedule or mild creative clashes. He was talking about serious internal battles with anxiety, emotional exhaustion, and constant stress that he felt he couldn't escape. When he mentioned to his team that he was at a breaking point, it foreshadowed an even greater storm brewing just a few weeks later. Interestingly, no one outside of his close circle realized just how bad it was. Justin soldiered on through appearances and interviews, carefully managing his public persona while confiding in only a few trusted allies. Unfortunately, that pressure cooker environment was about to explode. Within a month of the podcast recording, the friction surrounding the film, It Ends With Us, erupted into legal hostilities. Blake Lively filed a complaint that catalyzed further lawsuits, dragging more people into the fray: publicists, studios, and even surprising names like Ryan Reynolds. It's hard not to feel for Justin when you consider that he likely believed the worst had already passed. After all, the film's difficult press tour had ended, and the release was behind them. Yet the behind-the-scenes details, particularly his ongoing conflict with Blake Lively, were still smoldering. In Section 2, we'll break down the specifics of that film project and why it was the perfect breeding ground for a crisis nobody saw coming. Initially, It Ends With Us was touted as a high-profile adaptation of a beloved story, with Justin Vaughn heading the project in a leading creative capacity. A successful actor-turned-producer, Justin had poured considerable energy into shaping the film. Blake Lively, widely recognized for her strong performances and significant star power, came on board as the leading actress. Fans were thrilled at first. Many believed that Blake's charm and Justin's savvy would result in an unforgettable experience. But the problems started early, and they weren't subtle. During the film's press tour, Blake Lively's approach to promotion was widely criticized. Some fans found her choice of outfits baffling, while others were outraged at how she seemed to trivialize the story's heavier themes. The original material, after all, was anything but lighthearted. It dealt with serious, sometimes painful subject matter that many viewers believed deserved a solemn, respectful campaign. Online criticism poured in, blasting Blake for missing the point of the novel's gravity. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Justin was trying to keep the production afloat. According to rumors, tension between him and Blake kept intensifying. She was used to flexing creative control wherever she could, and he was used to steering his projects with minimal interference. When these two mindsets collided, the cast allegedly began to take sides. Some sources say the majority rallied behind Blake, partly due to her longer-standing Hollywood influence and partly because they disapproved of Justin's approach to addressing the film's controversies. By the time the promotional events ended, the online environment was toxic enough that fans and reporters alike noticed Justin appearing on red carpets alone. He stopped giving joint interviews with Blake, fueling rumors of a deepening rift. At first, it seemed like just another typical rumor. Maybe they were busy, maybe they were clashing creatively, or maybe they just didn't get along as co-stars. But the puzzle pieces started coming together when, shortly after, a complaint filed by Blake Lively came to light. That single legal motion cracked everything wide open. Now, what was once whispered about in fan forums became official. Something had gone terribly wrong between these two, leading not only to personal bitterness, but also to legal entanglements. And as we'll see in Section 3, the list of lawsuits and legal players grew at a shocking pace, turning this once promising film collaboration into a swirling storm of accusations, defamation suits, and irreparable damage. What began as a quiet rumor about a complaint suddenly ballooned into a full-scale legal battle. In December, just 1 month after Justin recorded his introspective podcast interview, everything escalated. Blake Lively formally filed a federal lawsuit against Justin Vaughn, alleging a variety of contractual and creative issues. Soon, Justin struck back with his own lawsuit, this time targeting the New York Times for what he deemed defamatory reporting connected to Blake's complaint. But it didn't stop there. Allies and associates on both sides started filing suits to defend their reputations. Justin's former publicist, Stephanie Jones, claimed defamation against him. Then, Justin countersued or filed separate actions implicating Blake, Ryan Reynolds, and their publicist, Leslie Sloan, for various grievances. Even Jed Wallace, another public relations figure, entered the fray with a multi-million-dollar suit against Blake for naming him in her complaint. The legal web seemed to grow more tangled by the day, pulling in more parties than anyone initially anticipated. Observers wondered, were these lawsuits based on genuine wrongdoing, or were they strategic maneuvers to pile pressure on the opposing side? Either way, the once hopeful collaboration between Justin Vaughn and Blake Lively now appeared irreparably damaged. The public's curiosity rose with each new filing. Every fresh court document detailed more behind-the-scenes drama, offering glimpses of just how toxic their relationship had become. Amid all this, each side played the blame game, with fans dividing into factions. Some believed that Justin had mishandled the production from the start, ignoring or underestimating Blake's strong vision for the film. Others insisted that Blake had overstepped her role as an actress, effectively taking the reins of the project in ways that weren't justified by her contract. Adding to the chaos, new speculations emerged about how Ryan Reynolds might have been involved. Was he working behind the scenes to protect Blake's interests, or was he simply caught in the crossfire? Through every twist, Justin's emotional well-being seemed to hang in the balance. If the year behind him was rough, the upcoming months promised even greater challenges. In his interview, he spoke of needing time to recover, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Lawsuits are demanding, draining, and extremely public. Whatever room Justin thought he might have to breathe was immediately consumed by the need to respond to legal threats, provide documentation, and constantly worry about the next big headline. Before we dive deeper into the personal toll this has taken on Justin, let's remember that his health concerns didn't start after the lawsuits. As we move into Section 4, we'll see how Justin's anxiety and physical ailments collided with the project's downfall, setting him up for one of the most difficult periods of his life. Well, before the lawsuits surfaced, Justin was already grappling with overwhelming stress. In the recently released podcast interview recorded pre-drama, he described sending a text message to his best friend and his company president, explaining that he was near the breaking point. He wasn't sleeping well, felt intense anxiety, and realized he hadn't let himself heal from the ups and downs of the last year. The interview revealed a vulnerable side of Justin that audiences rarely see. He admitted to wearing a lot of hats, from producer to brand manager and father. He also spoke about having serious medical concerns that led him to spend time in the hospital at various points that year. It's one thing to handle a stressful career, it's another to face physical health scares while balancing a family and a fast-paced Hollywood environment. Justin confessed that he typically tries to power through difficulties. He feels passionate about the movies he produces, the brand he's built, and the impact he believes his storytelling can have on the world. Yet that passion may have become a double-edged sword. By pouring every ounce of energy into these projects, especially It Ends With Us, he found himself with no space to decompress. Listeners were shocked to learn just how much he'd been battling behind the scenes. In a trembling voice, Justin recounted waking up at 4:30 in the morning, heart pounding, realizing he was heading toward a breakdown. His personal relationships were feeling the strain, his family was concerned, and his professional circles were pulling him in countless directions. Reflecting on the timeline, it's staggering. He recorded this heartfelt confession in November, presumably believing he was nearing the end of a grueling year. Yet just a few weeks later, the trouble ballooned when Blake Lively filed her official complaint. Instead of finding a moment of peace, Justin was thrust into one lawsuit after another, forced to confront an even bigger onslaught of anxiety. Many fans, hearing this, feel empathy for him. He wasn't simply blindsided by a difficult colleague or a scandal. He was already nearing his threshold for stress, and the subsequent legal turmoil acted like a match dropped on dry tinder. In Section 5, we'll pivot to Blake Lively's role in all of this, exploring her ambitions and approach to creative control. It's a perspective that might help us understand why the conflict with Justin turned into such a bitter confrontation. Long before It Ends With Us, Blake Lively was known for more than her acting chops. She frequently expressed a desire to be involved in the overall storytelling process, from costume design to script revisions. A resurging clip from an older Forbes Summit talk has reignited conversations about how she never wanted to be just a pretty face on set. She wanted to shape the narrative. In that speech, Blake explained that she often felt stifled by traditional acting roles where her input wasn't welcomed. She revealed that when she found directors and producers open to collaboration, she thrived. But when she encountered those who preferred to keep her confined to an actress's typical duties, friction inevitably arose. Now, many are pointing to that interview as a crystal ball for the It Ends With Us scenario. They believe she walked onto Justin's set determined to do more than recite lines, and when Justin resisted, it sparked a power struggle. According to the allegations in Justin's own lawsuit, Blake's involvement went far beyond typical on-set collaboration. He claims she effectively commandeered the production, disregarding his creative vision and making unilateral decisions about marketing, wardrobe, and even storyline interpretations. Some rumors suggest she also insisted on last-minute script changes that didn't align with Justin's original vision, further fanning tensions. Critics of Blake argue that she should have established her own production company if she wanted so much control. After all, other actresses like Margot Robbie and Sydney Sweeney have successfully produced and starred in their own projects, wielding full creative influence without overstepping existing contracts. So why didn't Blake do the same? Was it simply a matter of convenience, or did she underestimate how much friction her approach would create? Of course, Blake has her defenders. They see her as a trailblazer, a woman in Hollywood refusing to stay silent in a system that often undermines female voices. They argue that Justin should have adapted to her style, welcoming the opportunity for collaborative storytelling instead of clinging to traditional roles. Yet the conflict grew so severe that lawsuits became inevitable. As both sides continue to exchange accusations in court, the public is left wondering if either party could have defused the situation by being more transparent and considerate of the other's creative needs. With every new lawsuit or statement, social media erupts anew, fueling intense speculation about who's telling the truth. Fans have combed through old interviews, red carpet footage, and cryptic Instagram posts for any sign that Justin or Blake was at fault. Team Justin loyalists point to the heartbreak in his voice during the podcast as proof that he was pushed to his limit by an overbearing co-star. Team Blake advocates retort that she's always been upfront about her need for deeper involvement and that Justin should have known what he was signing up for. Further complicating matters is the involvement of Ryan Reynolds. Although best known as a charismatic actor and comedic figure, Ryan also has extensive production experience. Observers have questioned whether he quietly supported Blake's creative takeover or if he was blindsided by the conflict. The lawsuits referencing Ryan primarily revolve around claims that he might have facilitated or advised Blake in certain decisions, possibly overstepping boundaries as well. One rumor circulating online suggests that Justin felt isolated when the rest of the cast allegedly aligned more with Blake's perspective. Some claim the atmosphere on set became tense and divided, creating a stressful environment not just for Justin, but for everyone involved. If that's true, it could explain why Justin later described this year as emotionally devastating. He may have felt cornered by a powerful co-star with a large support network, as well as an entire production team increasingly receptive to her ideas over his. Interestingly, people have started drawing parallels to other Hollywood disputes where an actress or actor demanded more creative control than the original contract allowed. Sometimes, those stories end amicably, with the star eventually starting a production company. Other times, they devolve into feuds that can doom a project. In this case, It Ends With Us might end up remembered less for its content and more for the massive meltdown it caused behind the scenes. But that isn't the whole story. In Section 7, we'll expand the lens to other examples of celebrities who have navigated the delicate balance between starring in a movie and running the show. We'll see if there's a precedent for a star exerting so much influence that it drives the original producer into a flurry of lawsuits, and if so, how those situations ultimately concluded. Hollywood history is littered with stories of artistic clashes that sank promising ventures. One need only look at the reported disputes between directors and big-name actors who wanted a say in everything from the script to the soundtrack. In certain cases, these differences were ironed out privately. In others, the projects fell apart, leaving behind a trail of cancelled contracts and disenchanted fans. Take Margot Robbie, for instance. When she decided to bring Barbie to life, she did so through her own production company, Lucky Chap Entertainment. That allowed her to star in the film while also maintaining authority over crucial creative decisions. Similarly, Sydney Sweeney has emerged as an actress-producer, forming her own production arm and collaborating with major studios to bring her vision to screens worldwide. Neither have been embroiled in widely publicized lawsuits for overstepping because they established their roles from the get-go, setting clear boundaries and expectations. Comparing these scenarios to Blake Lively's approach, people can't help but wonder, if Blake had been as upfront about her intentions, perhaps even signing on as a co-producer, would that have minimized conflict? Justin Bond's supporters believe that she used her star power to seize control mid-production, throwing the project into chaos. Meanwhile, Blake's fans maintain that she saw the project as lacking direction and stepped up to guide it toward success. Realistically, the truth is probably more nuanced, somewhere between these two extremes. Both Justin and Blake might have had the film's best interests at heart, but failed to communicate. Once frustration escalated to a breaking point, there was little incentive to compromise, especially with the presence of large egos, reputations at stake, and teams of lawyers on call. Now, this begs the question, will other studios or producers hesitate to work with Blake, fearing a similar scenario? Or will Justin's credibility suffer because he appears unable to handle a collaborative push from a strong-minded actress? As the lawsuits continue, each party's professional standing hangs in the balance. And as we move into our final section, we'll circle back to Justin's recent revelations in that podcast, reminding us that behind the headlines and court documents are very human emotions, vulnerabilities, and heartbreak that no lawsuit can fully capture. Lost amid the swirl of legal jargon, public spats, and online debates is a simple fact. Both Justin Bond and Blake Lively are human beings. Justin's interview in November laid bare just how exhausted he already was. He spoke earnestly about anxiety, about rushing from one project to the next without time to heal, and about the toll it was taking on his relationships. At that moment, he likely had no idea just how much heavier his burden would become. As for Blake, she has long been transparent about wanting more than a one-dimensional acting role. She craves control over the characters she embodies, the stories she helps tell, and the image she projects to the world. That ambition has fueled her success, but in this instance, it may have contributed to a collision course with Justin. Did she anticipate that her push for creative input would spiral into multiple lawsuits? Probably not. But once lines were crossed and accusations flew, it became a high-stakes conflict neither side was willing to abandon. It's also essential to remember that no matter how meticulously planned a film production is, things can go awry fast when personal dynamics deteriorate. Money, prestige, and fan expectations can pressure both actors and producers to make defensive moves. When big personalities clash, the fallout can be staggering, even catastrophic, as we see with the bevy of lawsuits swirling around. It ends with us. For Justin, the next steps might involve reevaluating how he balances his passion with self-care. After the year he's had, no one could blame him if he took a step back from the public eye. However, his legal battles demand a high-profile defense, so retreat may not be an option. For Blake, this episode might prompt questions about whether she should formalize her ambitions through a production company, thereby establishing her creative authority from day one without stepping on toes mid-project. Then again, Hollywood has a short memory when it comes to successful box office runs. If It Ends With Us or future projects see financial gains, the messy disputes could fade from popular discourse. But that doesn't negate the personal damage done or the potential rifts that may never fully mend. Summing it all up, Justin Bond's newly released podcast episode foreshadows a turmoil that has since become painfully real. The difficult year he spoke about turned out to be just the opening act of an even more overwhelming crisis. If there's a lesson lurking here, it might be that communication and clarity of roles are paramount, especially when you have big names with equally big ambitions working together. Yet, the real takeaway might be more personal. Justin's words about needing time to heal resonate well beyond the boundaries of Hollywood drama. They're a reminder that even people who appear to have it all, celebrity status, successful careers, public admiration, can be silently battling internal storms. Meanwhile, Blake Lively's experience reaffirms that striving for creative ownership in an industry resistant to it can spark more than just a few disagreements. It can end in lawsuits that forever change relationships and reputations. Where does this saga go from here? With multiple lawsuits in progress, new documents and testimonies will keep surfacing. More revelations about what happened on set will likely come to light. Fans and critics will continue analyzing every detail, picking sides, and speculating on who was truly at fault. Through it all, Justin will have to keep facing the anxiety he spoke of, and Blake will have to reconcile her ambition with the damage this conflict has caused. One thing is certain, this story is far from over. Each new development adds another layer to a drama that has captured the public's attention for months. Whether the two ever find common ground or remain locked in opposition, they've already made Hollywood history for all the wrong reasons. Ultimately, their struggle may shape the way future collaborations are handled, pushing producers and stars alike to define their roles more transparently. At this point, viewers can only watch, wait, and wonder, will the aftermath of "It Ends With Us" lead to any lasting changes in how films are developed and promoted? Or will it simply fade into another cautionary tale of Hollywood egos clashing at the wrong time? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, no one involved will ever forget this year that tore open their behind-the-scenes world and exposed just how fragile success can be.